Hi everyone, in today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating my multidimensional foundation application technique. I'm going to be demonstrating this on myself. I wanted to review this technique with you for a couple of reasons. Firstly, when I learned to do my foundation application this way years ago, it was really a game changer for me and elevated the way my makeup application looked. Secondly, when we talk more about finding that perfect foundation match and blend on your client's skin, this technique is going to be a huge help with those of you that are kind of struggling with that area of your makeup applications. I will also say this technique is definitely not anything new. Every pro artist does this in their own way, and it's one of those techniques that you can totally customize to your method of makeup application, the products that you use in your kit. The idea behind this technique is that you're going to be using 3 shades of foundation to naturally sculpt the face as you apply the foundation. The blueprint for this is something that you've seen in so many videos on YouTube where you see a lot of that intense contouring. It's the exact same idea as that, except we're using 3 shades of foundation to naturally apply this on your client's skin. I'm going to walk you through the application, and we're also going to talk about this application technique when it comes to clients that maybe have lighter face, darker neck and chest, and also the opposite. Before we start with the application, skin prep, of course, is always going to be a very important step. With your clients, you want to make sure you're using the appropriate skin prep for their skin type. For myself today, I'm just using very simple products. I'm starting with the Cerave Moisturizing Cream. It's just a simple moisturizer that works. Because I'm not going outside, I'm not going to be using a sunscreen today. Normally for myself, I wear a sunscreen every day. My eye cream is this Neostrata Restore Eye Cream. And for my clients and myself, I always do some sort of lip prep before the foundation application. I'm using the Bite Beauty. This is the Agave Nighttime Lip Therapy. So that's what I have on my lips. The foundation I'm going to be using in today's video is the MAC Full Coverage Foundation. It's the same formulation as their concealer that's in the little black pot. So for those of you that are familiar with MAC products, that's what I'm using. I am probably going to pull maybe 1 or 2 shades from here, and then I have a few other shades that are not in this palette that I'm going to be using, but I'll talk you through those shades. I'm going to try to work through this with you and give you a really clear breakdown of how I'm mixing foundations for myself, so my skin tone can be a little bit difficult to work with. A few things to remember if you're going to be practicing this on yourself or someone that you know. Please make sure that you're still maintaining those very high hygiene standards. So you're going to wash your hands before. You're also going to need a stainless steel spatula, and you're going to need your stainless steel palette. I'm going to be working off these today. As far as brushes that I'm going to be using for this technique, I like to use 2, sometimes 3 different brushes when I'm working, and I'll probably use that many today. The Real Techniques setting brush is one of my favorites. You've seen this in a lot of my application videos. This is great if you're looking for a more targeted application with your foundation. For those of you maybe new to this technique, you might want to try this to make sure you don't over apply the foundation, and you'll see what I mean as we get into this demo. And then the Smith 115 is a really great brush. It's just a personal favorite of mine. I like the shape, I like the size. Sometimes a larger brush, of course, you're going to cover larger surface area and you can go a bit faster with something this size. And then of course I have my 70% alcohol just to make sure everything stays clean. I know some of you are going to have some questions about this palette. I will be doing a more in-depth review of this in a future video. Just a reminder of how to work with cream products when you are using these in your kit. You're going to have a stainless steel spatula that has been disinfected. You're going to swatch some of the color that you need. I like to be a little bit generous, so I'm not going back and forth. And then I'm going to apply that shade onto my palette and work off palette onto the skin. As far as the shade range of products that I'm going to be using today, for my skin tone, it can be a bit tricky. I'm normally in here, a cooler undertone, but in certain brands of product, I'm actually more neutral. A neutral undertone foundation, when you see brands that label their foundations in this way, usually mean there's equal parts warm and cool. With MAC specifically, I am more neutral. So today I'm likely gonna have to color adjust the pink undertone foundation to make it work for my skin. I'm just gonna get my headband on so we can start, just so you can see my face. As far as the blueprint and pattern for this application, it's very simple. I'm going to keep the lighter shades of foundation just in here down the center, and then the deeper shades of foundation that I'm using are going to shape and sculpt my face just around the perimeter. As far as where to start for this foundation application, again, make it your own, be creative. I personally like to start with lighter shades first. I'm gonna zoom in so you can really get an idea of what I'm doing. These are the 3 shades of foundation that I'm going to be working with on myself, and I have 1 adjuster shade, so I'll talk you through what they are. The first one I'm starting with is W10. This is a rosy beige undertone. This is the shade of foundation that is likely going to be one of the lighter shades. This one on myself should sort of resemble what's happening on my jawline and neck. I have NW20 and NW25. Now with MAC numbering and lettering, NW is their cooler foundations. For me, to remind myself, I think of NW as not warm, and that just keeps everything straight. So NW20, NW25. Now this is a corrector from MAC. As I mentioned, the concealer in the black pot is the same thing that's in the full coverage foundation palette. This is a very light yellow corrector. I'm gonna pull up Terri's color wheel right now just to show you. I told you that for myself, I know in MAC, sometimes the pinkier or cooler undertone foundations are too cool for my skin, and I need to neutralize some of that. So if we go across the color wheel, I'm going to need something that is more yellowy in undertone to neutralize some of those pinky undertones in the skin. I have chosen a very light yellow corrector from MAC. The reason I'm choosing a light yellow corrector, and this is something that you have to remember when you're correcting foundations and adjusting foundations for your client's skin. If I were to choose something that is a deep yellow, when I mix it with the shade that I need to correct, it's going to deepen that shade as well, and then it won't be correct on my skin. So I'll be using a shade of adjuster that is similar to the depth of my own skin tone, and this is a great formula to follow when you're doing any foundation adjusting or color correcting. If I was somebody that had a deeper skin and I needed something yellow to adjust the foundation I was applying, I wouldn't use this because this would lighten that foundation. I would use something that is closer to a true pure yellow because it's going to have the same intensity as the foundation that I would be using if I was a deeper skin. I hope that makes sense. I know all of this can be a little bit overwhelming, but I think as you see me apply this foundation, it will all start to make sense for you. A couple other things I wanted to mention. I normally do my foundation applications from forehead down. Essentially, I'm going to be applying that foundation that works with the majority of my skin tone here, and then I go back and sculpt once the rest of the makeup application is done. This is just the way I like to do things, so you'll have to adapt this application technique. Another important thing to remember when we are matching foundation, we need to look at the whole torso, not just the face. You need to consider the neck, the shoulders, the chest, especially if your clients are wearing something that has no sleeves or they're wearing something with a deeper neckline. You need to make sure you're taking all of this into consideration. Because I'm wearing a sweatshirt today, I'm going to be pulling the shade for the majority of my face, probably from this area of my neck. When it comes to swatching, that's totally fine. I swatch all the time on my client's skin. My preferred place to swatch is just down the jawline here. I get a nice picture of my client's face and neck, and it also is less disruptive to the rest of the skin prep that I've done on my client's skin. I'm going to start with the lightest shade, which is the W10. I already know it's going to be a bit pink for me, so I am going to take that W10 and just add the tiniest bit of that yellow corrector and blend it in. And you can see I've put a lot of product on my palette to work with, and I've given myself space to really mix the foundation on the palette so I don't have to keep going back and forth, back and forth. Once your brush has touched your client's skin and goes back onto the palette, anytime this spatula touches the palette, you're going to need to disinfect this before it goes back into your cream products or any products you're using. So just a reminder of that. That's why I like to really stack up my palettes. And I have a nice size palette here, so I have lots of room to work. Let's start with that combination. I like to start with the lighter color first. We'll see. Now, based on our blueprint, we're kind of pulling that center color up from the neck. That's going to be my color reference point for this foundation. Okay, seems to be okay. I'm going to go in with my bigger brush now just so we can make this faster. I'm kind of staying away from the under eye area because I don't want too much product on there if I know I'm going to be using a concealer. I'm keeping this to the center of the face and I'm blending it down into the neck. I know it can look a little bit light, but if you look at my neck color, It's a pretty decent blend. So we're on the right track. Now I'm gonna move to that second color, which I believe was NW20. Now I'm just gonna be cautious with this because I don't wanna go in. I'm gonna use my bigger brush, just take a little bit, and I'm gonna start using this on the perimeter of the face. And now we're gonna start to see this come together. I'm starting to sculpt. The color of the foundation is starting to make more sense with my skin tone. To create a more seamless blend between these two shades, I'm gonna take some of that foundation where we mix a W10 with the yellow adjuster, and then I'm gonna take some of that W20, mix that under here. So this is creating that in-between shade between the first and second shade, and I'm just gonna use this to start to even out the coverage. And this is also going to make the blend of the two colors seem more harmonious. What we've done so far is taken the lightest shade of foundation, which was W10 out of the 3. I adjusted it with that yellow neutralizer, so that's foundation 1. I applied that down the center of my face because I want to make sure everything is looking nice and light and bright and kind of working with the shade that's on my neck. I then took the medium shade of foundation, which is NW20, applied that on the perimeter of the face. So now I'm starting to sculpt out the features. And then I just blended those two together. Now, as you work with this, you can do the blending on the skin, whatever you're comfortable with, or you can do a combination of both where I blend on the skin and then I blend the two shades on my palette and pull from there. So you can see what my palette is starting to look like already. Still keeping the majority of product away from that under eye area. I'm gonna go now into the deepest shade of foundation, which is NW25, and we'll see how this looks. It might be too dark, I'm not sure. I'm gonna blend out from the center, which I normally do. Okay, so that's very natural, but we're starting to see that sculpt on the forehead. I'm going to bring this down the cheek. Into the neckline. Okay, I hope you can see that. And as I said, you can make this your own depending on what you're doing with your clients. You can go even more intense with that deepest shade if you want some more sculpting to happen on the skin. For myself, I like to keep it light, but maybe if I was going out somewhere, I'd want something more dramatic. And I'm using very little product for this. Taking that initial brush that we used and just blending that through. So I think this is going okay. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really see, but seems to be looking good. What we've done now with those 3 colors is we've given my face a little bit of shape. It doesn't look like a potato, it doesn't have one color of foundation all over the face. We've given some dimension now to the foundation application. So this also helps us save time when we're doing these makeup applications on our clients because that's less time we have to spend sculpting and shaping the face to make sure these features show up on camera. I'm gonna move to the concealer now. I'm using a clean brush. For the concealer on myself, I'm actually just going to use that W10 with a bit of the yellow adjuster mixed in. So I'm just gonna do that on my palette. I'm gonna go under the eyes with this. Again, as much or as little as you want for your concealer. And then I'm gonna use that as a highlight as well. So I have that concealer blended in. Just dragging it across the top of the cheekbone as well for a really pretty highlight. We're gonna go back and blend this even further. You have to customize this to whatever your client is looking for in the makeup application. Some clients are gonna wanna keep this area nice and light and bright. For me personally, I'm not a fan. I'm gonna blend this out a little bit further because that's just what I want for my own makeup application. I'm taking the foundation shade we adjusted, the lightest shade, pulling some of the NW20, which was the medium shade, bringing this to this portion of my palette, and I'm just gonna soften that panel of concealer. I'm gonna take my concealer brush again into that lightest shade. I don't do a lot of nose sculpting, but I'll just show you what it looks like. Here, here, here. And you can do this with concealer if you like. It's totally up to you. Or you can just use your foundation and then just softening those edges. I haven't added anything to this brush. I'm just using it to blend. You can use a clean brush for this. You can use a brush with just a bit of product on. Just make sure you don't have a lot of that darker color foundation. That's gonna mess with your blend. I'm gonna use the same brush again, that lightest shade, pull the W10, little yellow. Just make sure our jawline is blended. I have a little bit of product left. This is just me kind of adjusting it and customizing the application to what I like for myself and where I like to see highlights, some shape. So you can do this with your clients and customize it in any way you want. Just so I'm clear on that last step, I applied the concealer and I just kind of dragged it across my under eyes on the top of my cheekbone, and I'm using that as a double duty product to highlight. If you're not going to be using that and you just want a little concealer on the inner corner, you can take that lighter foundation that I started with in the way that I do it, and you can apply that lighter foundation on the top of the cheeks, down the center of the nose if you want, on the chin, just on the high points of the face, and then make sure that is blended. So you have some room to experiment and play there in that section of the application. At this point, if you're someone that likes to cream contour, you can do that now. Usually the cream contour shades are more neutral or blue undertone to really sculpt the face so it just doesn't look like a bronzy shade on the skin. When you move to setting the foundation with powder, which obviously I haven't done yet, there's so many different ways that you can use this technique even in your powder application. You can use a colorless powder all over and that will work. Remember that once you do set with powder, it does help to kind of soften the transition between the three colors on the face, but before you set, just make sure everything is well blended. Take a step back and look at your client's face from all angles and make sure you're okay. If I was going out or doing something more dramatic, I would make these highlights pop even more. I would probably go a little bit deeper on the outer perimeter of my face. You can also intensify the natural sculpt with different shades of setting powder, so you'll have to experiment with that. Sometimes on my clients, I will use the Laura Mercier powder in the medium deep, and I'll just apply that on the perimeter of the skin. So I set that area of the foundation, but I also get a deeper natural sculpt. So if I feel like my client needs that, I will do that. Sometimes I'll just use one shade of loose powder all over, and that works too because you've already added dimension with the 3 different foundation shades that you've applied. Play with the products in your kit. This is a really important part of this technique. You have to adapt it to what works for you and the products that you have. When you have clients that sit in your chair and have a very light face and deep neck and chest, this application technique is going to help you with that. Foundation shade that's going down the center of the face is going to match very closely to what you see on your client's skin. When you get into the deeper colors, especially the darkest color of the 3 that's going to go around the perimeter of the face, that's where you're going to pull in that deeper neck color. So you're going to find something that matches with this portion and you're going to bring that into the perimeter. When you have a client that has a deeper face and a lighter neck and chest, the color that you're going to pull up the center, you're going to pull from what already exists on their neck and chest, but you're going to use something that's fuller coverage so we can really brighten that area. So it's important to find the right undertone there. For the color that's going to come around the perimeter of the face, it's going to be really simple. You're going to use what's just naturally there on your client's skin, and that's how you're going to blend the face, neck, and chest together. It just takes practice, and it takes really nailing that client undertone so you can make the right choices for the colors that you're choosing for foundation, but we will talk about that in more detail in another video. There are so many different ways to execute this technique, so I would really encourage you to experiment with this, see what works for you based on your style of makeup artistry and the products that you have. There are ways to do this technique that are even faster than what I've shown you today, something that I use on my own personal makeup application every day, and sometimes when I'm in a rush with the clients, I'll do kind of one shade all over, and then I'll go in and sculpt very quickly afterwards with different press powders to get that dimension on the skin, and it kind of cuts down the time. Even when I am in a rush, I will use this technique on my client's skin. It again is just giving my clients that pro quality finish with their makeup application, and it gives the skin dimension on camera, and that is so important in the work that we do as well. I hope I was able to clearly explain this technique to you. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye everyone.